We've tried a couple of new things on this project, and it's one of the first projects of this size that I was able to fully design and price in front of the customer on the first visit. I did a video about that, so I'll post a link to that in the description, or possibly on the screen somewhere if I can figure that out. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you a very quick summary of the Sketchup design and the manufacture and the installation process, with some photos with probably music behind them. But before that, let me just talk to you a little bit about what's been involved and show you some of the details. Now, one of the new things to us in our approach to this project was we had the doors manufactured using CNC.
Nice. Well, they look pretty crisp. Oh, so you dropped the panels in already? For that one, yeah. That's a tighter radius than I was expecting at the back there. What was the cutter size on that? 8 mil. Okay, right, that's alright. That's nice. Okay, so about how long did this all take to cut then?
Well, it was a bit of an experiment, but it really makes a lot of sense for us and for the customer, because you get a perfectly squared door. We don't have anything clamping up in the workshop. We don't have any issues with things going slightly off square or slightly off flat, and there's no joints. So I really see no reason not to continue doing these this way. I thought you might be interested to see the finish on the inside. So the panel's fitted into the back with a tolerance of a fraction of a millimetre, which really blends in with the paint. I mean, you can see it's there, which I think's good, because you can tell it's just not a complete flat panel door. But it blends in. It looks, to me, it looks great. It looks as good, probably better than the doors that we make in the more traditional 5-piece way. I've done another video you may have seen talking more about the paint finish and the details of construction to keep that finish really pristine. Something I didn't talk about there is the lighting. So we use the Hayfley Luke's 12 volt lighting system, and generally we can fit this without the need for an electrician because it just plugs into a socket. On this job we did have an electrician, a very helpful guy called Ryan Keaton, who I would recommend, in Sheffield. He came before and after our installation to fit the sockets in the back panel rather than them being on the wall and having a cutout, which is what we do for lower value work. So just on the lights a little bit more, these are LED spotlights controlled by a switch that's fairly discreetly placed here at quite a convenient height. And of course the positions of them were agreed with the customer on that first visit. So we'll probably have a lot of books filling most of the space, and then a few ornaments just picked out with the lights there. Now on to other details of construction. The drop down flap here has hinges and hardware by Sugatsune, which is a rather nice hardware supplier that we occasionally use. We opted to have two stays there, just to be sure, with a little kid around, that doesn't get lent on and broken, and it's quite solid. The lighting driver is at the back in there, and that socket, well, that plug that you can see coming up there is what powers the lighting driver. That's just where we opted to connect it, because the outlets were already roughly in that position. As you may have guessed, this is where a television is going to go. These are storage for toys, etc. There'll be a couch along this wall, which is partly why we opted for the joins that were necessary because of the length of the unit. We put the joins here because they're more out of sight. You're generally going to be looking in this direction. Well, that's the main points I wanted to give you an overview before showing you the construction process, which I think will speak for itself. If you do watch to the end, I'm also going to come back and talk about the mistakes that we made, which I know will interest the other makers. These are the sort of things that I often wish other makers would talk about, because it's tempting to think that no one else makes mistakes and everyone else just creates perfect fitted furniture. If you're a customer watching this, don't worry, we always deliver, and we've delivered this on time as agreed. The customer's very pleased with it. But it may just be of interest to see the mistakes and challenges that do sometimes happen along the way and how we resolve them, because at the end of the day we'll always resolve them by some means. So have a look at the construction photos and I'll come back to you after that. So, what you've been waiting for, what are the mistakes that we made and how did we fix them? There were two big mistakes on this project, which I thought were, well, one of them I thought was a disaster. I'll come to that second. The slightly smaller mistake was we didn't allow any scribing allowance. Well, we thought we had, because we always would, but it turned out we didn't cut the parts with any scribing allowance either side. Now, what I mean is, when I survey a space, I write down the maximum measured width of the room, because walls aren't always perfectly plumb, and we design everything to fit that maximum measured width, but we give tolerance with scribes that are maybe about 1.5 inches, so you've got tolerance there, but anything that has to butt up to the wall, such as a countertop, we cut it 20mm oversize to that measured distance. And the way we do that using Sketchup is that part is drawn as if it meets the wall, but there's a little bit of programming in it using the Cabinet Sense plugin that we use that tells it to output to the cut list program with 20mm extra. So these were all cut on that basis, brought them to fit, and discovered that those parts didn't have any extra on. Now it turns out to have been a little bit of a software glitch because it was set on the component but it didn't output to the cut list. So these things happen. We got lucky with this because we'd levelled all the units, fixed them to the wall, and then came to dropping in this countertop here because we wanted to get the corner right before building everything off it. And that literally just dropped in snug, which was total fluke and quite surprising because it means that the wall here is perpendicular and straight, and we had just happened to fit the units at just the right distance from the wall that would drop in between the wall and the unit. So that was a pure bit of luck. And then that raised the concern that over here, this also might not have the scribing allowance on. It turned out it didn't, and we were a little bit more worried about this because we were ending up with a gap that was about 6mm, a quarter of an inch, which is really too big. So the way I got round that is I took another sliver of material, super glued it on, shaped it to the front, and then fitted it, and we had to overpaint it. And it looks fine, and luckily it's on the side that you really won't ever look at because the couch will be there. So that was one mistake. The biggest mistake was all of these doors, which we got made sometime in advance by CNC, when we came to fit them to the cabinets, to test fit them I should say, in the workshop, so that was after spraying the doors, sanding, spraying, finishing, quite a long process, they were 20mm too tall and everything else was made. So we thought, oh, what are we going to do? We couldn't possibly cut them down because you would make the top and bottom rail thinner. And I just thought, well, we've got to remake them, which is what we would do to get something looking right. But then we gave it some thought and we realised if we just dropped the plinth height to 80mm instead of the standard 100mm, it would suddenly all work. And it was one of those judgment calls. Do we raise this with a customer, say, oh, we've got to delay everything and this is why? We would always be transparent, but in this situation we thought, you know, we can achieve the same result. I mean, it looks great. I've never in a drawing said that plinth is going to be exactly 100mm high, and these, from experience, that kind of level of detail generally isn't significant. So we just made some adjustments which included the doors overlapping the plinth there. You see, whereas the door would normally stop at the bottom of the unit, it drops down 20mm. Doesn't really matter. The main change apart from that we had to make was to bring this unit into line, whereas the plinth here stayed at 100mm, but the doors overlapped it. We had to make this plinth actually 80mm, chop the feet shorter, and then to accommodate it, we packed the top with actually an 18mm piece because it was easier, and there was a 2mm disparity which we had to figure out. But the point is, we solved it. The only real visual difference is a slightly shorter plinth and a packing piece here, which I have no doubt, if I hadn't mentioned it, no one would have said, why is that there? Because it doesn't look wrong at all. So that's a little insight into quite a big mistake that we made. To justify it, I suppose, not making the doors in-house, an error like that wasn't picked up. Whereas normally there might be an error on the drawing, then someone else will do the making and think, oh, this doesn't quite look right. Anyway, excuses. But these things happen, and there's always a way to fix it. Of course, the ultimate way is to remake stuff, but often you don't have to do that. So that's about it. I hope that's been interesting. Do comment. Do share any of your experiences as a maker. or ask me any other details about how this was made. I'll be happy to share that. Thanks for watching.